There is a kind of poverty that has nothing to do with money. You can have a full bank account, a stable job, a roof over your head, and still feel empty, still feel lost, still feel like something is missing, something you cannot name, something no amount of achievement seems to fill. Buddha called this the poverty of the spirit, and more than 2,500 years ago, he identified its exact causes, not in the world around you, but in the habits you have quietly built inside yourself. These are not dramatic sins. They are not crimes. They are ordinary, everyday patterns of thought and behavior that the mind falls into without realizing. And that is precisely what makes them so dangerous. They are invisible. They feel normal. They feel like just the way things are. But Buddha warned, these habits are not natural. They are learned. And because they are learned, they can be unlearned. Today we will walk through 7 of these habits, not to make you feel guilty, not to judge the life you have lived, but to give you something far more valuable than judgment, clarity. Because once you see the chain, you can choose whether to keep wearing it. Stay until the end. The 7th habit is the one most people never talk about, and it may be the heaviest one of all. Habit 1. Comparing your inner world to everyone else's outer world. A young monk once came to the Buddha troubled by a familiar ache. He had watched his fellow monks during the evening meal, laughing at ease, unbothered, and he had felt sitting among them, utterly alone in his suffering. Why, he asked, does it seem as though everyone else has found peace, except for me? Buddha looked at him gently and said something the monk did not expect. He said, "You are not seeing their lives, you are seeing their faces." This is perhaps the oldest trap the mind falls into, and it has never been more dangerous than it is today. We live in an age where the outer surface of people's lives is on constant display, curated, filtered, presented for maximum impression. And the human mind, which evolved to compare and measure and assess, does exactly what it was built to do. It compares. But here is the fatal flaw in that comparison. You are always comparing the most intimate, unfiltered version of your inner experience, the doubt, the fear, the loneliness, the confusion, against the most polished, edited version of everyone else's outer life. You see their highlight. They live with their own darkness, just as you do. You just never see it. Buddha taught that this habit, this relentless comparing, is a form of self-inflicted suffering. The Pali word he used was dukkha, a dissatisfaction that arises not from lack, but from a mind that cannot rest in what it has, because it is always measuring against what it does not. The person you are jealous of has something they are ashamed of. The life you envy has a cost you cannot see from the outside. Every face you compare yourself to is a mask, and behind every mask is a human being who has known the exact same sleepless nights you have known. The habit of comparison does not just steal your peace, it makes genuine progress invisible, because no matter how far you grow, there will always be someone further ahead in some dimension. If your sense of worth depends on winning that comparison, you have built your house on water. It will never hold. Buddha's instruction was not to stop observing the world. It was to stop using the world as a mirror for your value. Your worth is not determined by the distance between you and someone else. It is determined by the distance between who you are and who you are capable of becoming, and that journey belongs to no one else. Habit 2. Living in the story of what happened. There is an old teaching story that has been passed down through Buddhist traditions for centuries. A traveler is walking a long road. Every mile, he bends down and picks up a stone that represents something that happened to him, a betrayal, a failure, a loss, an injustice, a moment of shame. By the time he reaches the end of the road, he cannot walk, not because the road is long, because the stones are too heavy. Buddha taught that the past is not where suffering is stored. Suffering is stored in the habit of returning to the past. The event itself is finished. It is over. It exists now only as memory. But the mind, if left untrained, does not treat it as memory. It treats it as reality. It replays it. It revisits it. It tells the story again and again, each time from the perspective of the wounded self, each time reinforcing the identity of someone who was wronged, who was hurt, who lost. And here is the tragedy of that habit. The story becomes more real than the present moment. The pain of something that happened years ago becomes more vivid, more urgent, more consuming than the life that is actually happening right now, in this breath, in this moment. This is not weakness. This is not a character flaw. This is how the untrained mind works. Trauma research has confirmed what Buddha observed thousands of years ago. The mind does not simply let go of pain. It holds on. It tries to resolve the unresolvable. It loops, but holding on does not heal the wound. It keeps the wound open. It prevents the new experience from entering because the old story is taking up all the space. Buddha did not teach suppression. He never said pretend the past did not happen or force yourself to feel fine. What he taught was something more radical and more difficult: to see the past as past, to recognize that the self who was hurt then is not the self who is breathing now, to understand that the story you keep telling is a choice, not always a conscious one, but a choice, and that a different choice is available. The habit of living in the past story is one of the most common causes of spiritual poverty because it makes growth feel impossible. If you are defined by what happened to you, then nothing you do today can change who you are. You are frozen, preserved in amber, unable to move. The present moment is the only place where life actually occurs. Every moment you spend inside the story of what happened is a moment stolen from what is possible, and possibilities, unlike the past, are unlimited. Habit 3. Mistaking restlessness for ambition. There was a merchant who came to sit with the Buddha for a single afternoon. He was between journeys, always between journeys, and he told the Buddha of his plans with barely a pause for breath. A new trade route, a new partnership, a new city, a new venture. Each one would be the one that finally brought him what he was looking for. Buddha listened patiently. Then he asked one question. When you arrive at the new city, what do you plan to find there that you have not found in the last one? The merchant stopped. He had no answer. There is a habit the modern world celebrates as a virtue: constant movement, constant striving, never being satisfied, always reaching for the next level, the next goal, the next achievement. And on the surface, this looks like ambition. It looks like drive. It looks like the kind of hunger that builds great things. But Buddha made a distinction that our culture desperately needs to hear. He distinguished between movement that comes from purpose and movement that comes from the inability to be still. The first is healthy. The second is an escape. When restlessness is mistaken for ambition, you can spend an entire life running, from job to job, relationship to relationship, city to city, idea to idea, without ever arriving anywhere, because the destination was never a place. The ache was never really for the next achievement. The ache was for something the movement was specifically designed to avoid: the silence inside yourself. Buddha taught that the mind which cannot be still is a mind that is afraid of what it might hear if it stops, afraid of the emptiness it might find, afraid of the questions that rise up when the noise dies down. And so it keeps generating noise. It keeps creating urgency. It mistakes the acceleration for progress. True ambition, the kind that produces meaningful work and genuine growth, comes from a place of groundedness. It has direction. It has intention. It can pause without falling apart. It can sit in silence without running from what it finds there. The habit of mistaking restlessness for ambition keeps you perpetually dissatisfied, perpetually moving, perpetually arriving somewhere only to discover that the emptiness traveled with you, because it was never outside. It was always within, waiting patiently for you to stop long enough to look at it. And the strange paradox that Buddha taught: only when you stop running from the emptiness do you discover that it was never empty at all. The stillness you were afraid of is the stillness that contains everything you were looking for. Habit 4. Giving your peace to people who never asked to hold it. One of the most quietly devastating habits of the mind is this: handing your inner peace to other people and then waiting, sometimes for years, for them to give it back. You have felt this. Someone said something, a dismissive word, a careless remark, a betrayal, a silence that felt like rejection, and it took root inside you, and you have carried it. You have rehearsed conversations in your mind that will never happen. You have imagined what you would say if you could say it. You have waited for an apology that never came, or came and somehow was not enough. You have let the mood of one person in one moment determine the quality of entire days, entire weeks, sometimes entire seasons of your life. Buddha called this tanha, thirst, but not thirst for water, thirst for the world to be different from what it is, thirst for people to behave differently than they behaved, thirst for the past to be other than it was. He told a story once of a man who was struck by an arrow, and instead of pulling the arrow out, the man began demanding answers. Who shot it? What was their name? What clan did they come from? What kind of wood was the arrow made of? And while he was demanding answers, the wound was deepening. The people who disturb your peace are the arrow. The questions, why did they do it? How could they? What does it say about me? Are the second arrow. And the second arrow always causes more damage than the first. This does not mean the first arrow didn't hurt. It did. It means that the suffering you are choosing to extend by carrying it forward, by rehearsing it, by letting it color every conversation and every morning after, that suffering is optional, not easy to release, but optional. Buddha was not teaching emotional numbness. He was not saying don't feel. He was saying feel what is real and then release what is finished. The person who hurt you has, in most cases, moved on. They are not sitting in the same weight that you are carrying. You are holding something alone that was already set down by the one who created it. Your peace is yours. It was never theirs to take. It was only ever yours to give. And the habit of giving it away, of placing it in the hands of people, circumstances, opinions, and outcomes, is the habit that keeps the spirit perpetually dependent, perpetually anxious, perpetually one word away from collapse. Reclaim it, not through anger, not through distance, through the quiet radical decision that your inner life belongs to you and that no one else has been given the authority to govern it without your consent. Habit 5. Confusing accumulation with fulfillment. A wealthy landowner once made the journey to sit with the Buddha. He had brought his finest gifts. He spoke of his estates, his storerooms, his influence. He was proud. He was also, though he would not have used the word, exhausted. He said, "Master, I have spent my life building. I now have more than I ever imagined. Why then do I feel as though I have nothing?" Buddha said, "Because you have been filling a container that has no bottom." This is the habit of accumulation, and it is perhaps the most celebrated trap in human civilization. The belief that enough of something, enough money, enough status, enough validation, enough experiences, enough possessions will eventually produce the feeling of fullness that has always been missing. The mind makes an agreement with itself, usually so early that it cannot remember making it. The agreement says, when I have this thing, I will feel okay. When I reach this level, I will feel secure. When I achieve this goal, I will feel worthy. And the mind honors this agreement completely, right up until the moment the thing arrives. And then, quietly and devastatingly, it moves the goalpost. It says, not quite this, a little more. Then I will feel it. Buddha called this the second characteristic of existence, anicca, impermanence. Nothing that exists in the external world can produce a permanent internal state. The joy of acquisition is real, but it is temporary. The pride of achievement is real, but it is temporary. The comfort of possession is real, but it is temporary. And a life built on the pursuit of temporary satisfactions is a life lived on a treadmill that never stops. This is not an argument against achievement. Buddha was not teaching passivity, he was teaching discernment, the ability to pursue things in the world without placing the burden of your wholeness upon them, to enjoy without clinging, to achieve without requiring the achievement to make you whole. The habit of confusing accumulation with fulfillment is spiritually exhausting because it turns every arrival into a departure. Every destination becomes the starting line of the next race. There is no rest because rest has been made conditional on a finish line that keeps moving. The fullness you are looking for cannot be accumulated. It is already present beneath the noise of wanting. The habit of accumulation is partly what is making it so hard to hear. Habit 6, the practice of half-presence. There is a teaching on mindfulness so central to everything Buddha taught that it is impossible to separate it from the rest of his wisdom. He called it sati, awareness, and the opposite of sati is not unawareness. It is something more precise. It is the habit of being somewhere while your mind is entirely somewhere else. Watch yourself for a single day, honestly, without judgment. How often are you actually where you are? How often during a conversation is your mind already composing your response while the other person is still speaking? How often do you eat while reading, walk while scrolling, listen while planning, rest while worrying? How often are you physically present in one place while mentally and emotionally inhabiting an entirely different one? This is not a modern problem caused by smartphones. Buddha was teaching against this habit 2,500 years ago in a world with no screens. Because the tendency of the untrained mind to drift from the present moment into the past or future is not a product of technology. It is a product of the way the untrained mind naturally moves. Technology has simply accelerated it, multiplied it, made it almost impossible to resist. But the cost is immense. Half presence means half a life. When you are not truly here for your meals, you are not nourished, not just physically, but in the simple daily pleasure of being alive. When you are not truly present in your relationships, those relationships become transactional, shallow, unmemorable. When you are not present for your own grief, your own joy, your own creative work, you process none of it. It all passes through you without landing, without teaching, without changing anything. Buddha taught that the present moment is not merely where life happens. It is the only place where liberation is possible. The past cannot be changed, and the future cannot be entered. There is only this breath, this moment, this conversation, this meal, this sensation. And if you are not here for it, you are not here for your life. The habit of half-presence is spiritually impoverishing in the most literal sense. It means that all the richness available in ordinary experience, the taste of food, the warmth of connection, the beauty of light through a window, the feeling of your own breathing, all of it passes by unreceived. You live on the surface of your life, skimming it, never diving in, wondering why nothing feels deep enough. Full presence is not complicated. It does not require a retreat or a teacher or an hour of meditation. It requires a single decision, renewed over and over, to be here fully for what is actually here. That decision, practiced daily, transforms ordinary life into something that feels, for the first time, genuinely inhabited. Habit 7. Believing that you are your thoughts. We have arrived at the 7th habit, and as promised, this is the one that underlies all the others. This is the root from which every other form of spiritual poverty grows. A monk once sat with the Buddha in deep distress. He said, "Master, my mind torments me. Dark thoughts come, shameful thoughts, fearful thoughts, angry thoughts. I try to stop them, but they keep coming. I feel I am a terrible person for having them." Buddha asked him gently, "When a stranger walks through your village, are you responsible for their presence?" The monk said, "No, master." Buddha said, "Then why do you take responsibility for every thought that passes through your mind?" This is perhaps the most radical and most liberating teaching Buddha ever offered. and it is the one most thoroughly ignored by modern culture, which tends to treat thought as identity. You think you are not good enough, therefore you are not good enough. You think you are unlovable, therefore you are unlovable. You think anxious thoughts, therefore you are an anxious person. You think dark thoughts, therefore something is wrong with you. But Buddha taught that thoughts are not you. They are events. They arise in the mind the way weather arises in the sky. You are not the weather. You are the sky. The weather passes through. The sky is unchanged. In Sanskrit, this distinction is expressed as the difference between citta, the storehouse of mental content, memories, impressions, conditioning, and the pure awareness that observes citta without being defined by it. The thoughts are content. You are the container. The thoughts are what passes through. You are what remains when they have gone. This is not a metaphor. Modern neuroscience has confirmed that the mind generates thousands of thoughts per day, the majority of which are not chosen, not controlled, and not reflective of character. The brain produces thoughts the way the liver produces bile. It is a biological function. You are not your biology, but the habit, the deep, unconscious, constantly reinforced habit, is to take each thought personally, to identify with it, to let it define you. And when you do that, you hand the most disturbed, most fearful, most conditioned part of yourself the keys to your entire identity. You let the most reactive voice in the room decide who you are. This is the source of the comparison. When you believe you are your thoughts, and your thoughts say you are less than others, you suffer. This is the source of the past story. When your thoughts say you are defined by what happened to you, you are trapped. This is the source of the restlessness, the peace given away, the accumulation, the half-presence. Every one of these habits is powered by the same engine, the belief that the voice in your head is you. It is not. You are the one listening to it. That distinction between the thinker and the thought, the observed and the observer, the weather and the sky, is the beginning of everything Buddha taught. It is the first step out of spiritual poverty, because the moment you stop identifying with every thought, you discover something that no thought can touch, no habit can reach, no circumstance can diminish. You discover the awareness that has been here all along, quiet, steady, unfrightened. It was never the one suffering. It was only the one watching. And that, the Buddha said, is what you truly are. 7 habits, 7 invisible chains, none of them dramatic, none of them requiring a catastrophe to form. They grow slowly, quietly, the way dust settles on a surface when no one is looking, comparing, living in old stories, mistaking restlessness for purpose, giving your peace to others, accumulating instead of inhabiting, half-presence, and above all, believing you are your thoughts. Buddha did not present these as moral failures. He presented them as misunderstandings. And every misunderstanding, once seen clearly, loses most of its power. You cannot unsee what you have genuinely understood. You cannot go back to the prison once you have recognized the door. The path out is not dramatic. It does not require you to abandon your life, your relationships, your ambitions, your personality. It requires only that you begin to notice each day in small moments which of these habits is running in the background, and then to make quietly and without self-criticism a different choice, one breath at a time, one moment of genuine presence at a time, one thought observed without being believed, one past story set down, one comparison released, one measure of peace kept for yourself. This is what Buddha meant by the path, not a destination, a direction taken in ordinary moments, in ordinary life, by an ordinary person who has decided to stop being ordinary in the way they inhabit themselves. The poverty Buddha warned about was never about what you lack. It was always about what you carry. And today, you have seen what you are carrying. The rest is yours to decide. If this teaching reached something in you, if you recognized yourself in even one of these habits, leave a comment below with the number of the habit that spoke to you most. You are not alone in carrying it, and the fact that you can see it now means you have already begun to put it down. Subscribe for more teachings rooted in ancient wisdom, and share this video with someone who is searching, because sometimes the right words at the right moment change everything.